Do you think Lucy Powell's going to cause trouble for the Prime Minister?
She's certainly going to cause trouble for the Prime Minister. I think her election proves the fact that Keir Starmer has failed to stamp his authority on the country. I mean, he's breaking all kinds of records for unpopularity. Despite being an incredibly boring man, has managed to become more unpopular than Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair in their time, which takes some hell of a doing. He's now also clearly failed to stamp his authority on his own party. His hand-picked candidate, Bridget Phillipson, came short, not nearly as much as people expected her to, but nevertheless, this is pretty telling. Will Lucy Powell be able to turn it around?
Can I just jump in here for a second? These are two women with 26 years of experience and in cabinet, and what you're saying is that this is all about the man.
Well, I was about to make the second point about how terrible I think they are on their own terms, if you would let me. But Lucy Powell is a great example. I think there is something grim and unpleasant about the fact that in the week in which, say, the grooming gangs inquiry completely unwound, someone who was on record on the BBC only a few months ago dismissing that decades-long scandal as a dog whistle became deputy leader, as has nothing to do with her sex, it has everything to do with her record. And I think, in general, the issue that the Labour Party has right now is it's primarily having a conversation with itself. You could say that that's kind of necessary because of the fact that it seems very unlikely they're going to get into majority territory at the next election, so shoring up the base has become a lot more important. But I just struggle to see how this is anything other than a continuing headache for Keir Starmer, who, as I say, seems to have no authority in the country or even in his own party at this point.
Sarah Pochin said that her comments had been phrased poorly. Tom, what do you make, first of all, just of the comments, but also of the reaction from the political parties?
I don't think we should be jumping to conclusions just because someone took umbrage at the kind of over-representation of certain groups in advertising. It is a fact. There was an industry report in Channel 4 recently said some groups are over-represented, some groups are underrepresented. So,
but presumably advertisers do it because they think it's a positive thing and will get them.
It's about making money and selling your product.
Well, there's also a lot of trends within advertising, within the media, who've taken on this quite kind of patronising idea that you need to kind of constantly kind of over-represent certain groups to make ethnic minorities feel better, to kind of lecture people on diversity. There are these kind of trends within advertising which I think are kind of
Tracy, do you think that's what's going on here?
But just on the substance, right? I don't get up in the morning upset about this issue. Maybe it's because I, grew up in London, so therefore this is not something that strikes me in quite the same way. But if we're talking about racism in society, surely we should talk about the explosion of racism that we've seen since October the 7th. Surely we should talk about the series of racially aggravated that we've seen in the West Midlands recently. I think this kind of tendency that we've got ourselves into to talk about misplaced comments, clumsy comments at the cost of the real issues doesn't make a lot of sense. And to see Wes Streeting saying that Nigel Farage, and again, I'm not a reform cheerleader here, Nigel Farage doesn't believe that the flag belongs to anyone other than white people, then why is Zia Yusuf at Reform Conference standing in front of a giant Union Jack? I get that Labour are running scared of reform and they think that reverting back to this script of just calling people racist will work for them, even though it hasn't worked over a very long time. But I think there's a certain level of desperation to be
Tracy,
well, I think there's a massive disconnect with what you're saying, because you're saying that we should focus on the stuff that's happening in our communities, the assaults and the violence, but you get a free pass if you're a leader and you're an elected politician, that it does not matter what you say. And it doesn't matter what's then shared and emboldened. And it just shows your white privilege, I'm afraid, that you say it doesn't matter to me because it is not your lived experience. And let me tell you, people who have different lived experience to you will be very, very hurt by those feelings and upset and feel that their workplace has got more increasingly dangerous because of that sort of language becomes normalised.
Not for the first time. Not for the first time you're putting words in people's mouth. I said the advertising issue didn't bother me precisely because I grew up in a quite diverse part of London. And again, all I'm saying is we've gotten into this kind of tick over recent years, which is clumsy comments from a politician will lead the news agenda for days and days and days when we've actually got serious problems of discrimination, of racism within our society. As I say, particularly with the issue of anti-Semitism, which has been ignored for far too long in this country. And yet we find ourselves having political potshots at one another over a question of comments which were made, regretted and then apologised for. I just think there's a disproportion in the amount of attention we're paying to this.